Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. The Watchers. I've spent 27 years as a security guard, and I've seen some strange things in my time. People doing drugs in stairwells, couples getting frisky in storage closets, even a guy trying to steal a vending machine by himself. But nothing, absolutely nothing, compares to what I've witnessed over the past 3 weeks at Meridian Tower. I took the job because it seemed easy enough. Meridian is one of those gleaming glass and steel monoliths in the business district, 68 floors of corporate offices, legal firms, and financial services companies. The kind of place where people work too hard during the day and clear out completely at night. Perfect for a man my age looking to ease into retirement with minimal stress. The security office sits in the basement level, a windowless room with rows of monitors showing feeds from the building's 214 cameras. My shift runs from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., Sunday through Thursday. The weekend guys handle Friday and Saturday, simple enough. The first 2 months went exactly as expected. I'd make my rounds every couple of hours, check the doors, monitor the cameras, and read my paperback novels in between. The building was always empty by midnight, except for the occasional cleaner or workaholic executive. Then came that first night, Tuesday, October 12th. I remember it clearly because it was my ex-wife's birthday, and I'd spent the afternoon feeling sorry for myself before coming in for my shift. I was doing my 2 a.m. walkthrough, taking the service elevator to the top floor and working my way down, when I noticed something odd on the 53rd floor. The floor belonged to Axiom Analytics, some kind of data processing company. As I stepped off the elevator, I saw a light on in one of the conference rooms at the end of the hall. This wasn't particularly unusual. People forgot to turn lights off all the time, but I headed down to check it anyway. As I approached, I noticed the door was slightly ajar. Through the gap, I could see a figure sitting at the far end of the conference table, facing away from me. "Excuse me," I called out, pushing the door open wider. "Building's closed. You can't be here this late without authorization." The figure didn't move or respond. I stepped into the room, my hand instinctively moving to the radio on my belt. "Sir, ma'am, I need you to acknowledge me." Still nothing. I moved around the table to get a better look, and that's when I felt it. A cold spot in the air, like walking through a freezer door that had been left open. The hair on my arms stood up and my breath fogged in front of my face. When I reached the other end of the table, there was no one there. The chair was empty, but it was spinning slowly, as if someone had just vacated it. I checked the entire floor. Every office, every restroom, every closet, nothing. No one could have left without me seeing them. I'd been standing in front of the only exit. I told myself it was just my imagination, that maybe the chair had been spinning from someone who left earlier, or perhaps there was a draft. But deep down, I knew better. Back in the security office, I rewound the camera footage for the 53rd floor. The conference room camera showed an empty room all night. No one had entered or left. But at exactly 2:17 a.m., the time I'd been there, the chair at the end of the table spun by itself, making a complete rotation. I should have reported it. Should have told my supervisor, or at least mentioned it to the day shift guard when he came to relieve me. But I didn't. Who would believe me? Besides, one weird occurrence doesn't mean anything. I'd worked graveyard shift long enough to know that tired eyes and an active imagination can create all sorts of phantoms. 3 nights later, it happened again, this time on the 47th floor, in the offices of a law firm. I was watching the monitors when I noticed a shadow moving across one of the screens. Camera 137, overlooking the main reception area. It was just after 3 a.m. The shadow moved like a person, but it was distorted somehow, too tall, too thin. It glided across the reception area and disappeared down a hallway. I switched to camera 142, which covered that hallway, but there was nothing there. I radioed the other guard on duty, Miguel, who was supposed to be patrolling the parking garage. "Miguel, you see anyone enter the building in the last hour?" His voice crackled back, negative, frank. "Place is dead tonight." I hesitated before asking my next question. "You ever notice anything strange on the cameras, like things that shouldn't be there?" There was a pause before he responded. "You mean like glitches?" "System gets wonky sometimes." "Yeah," I said, not wanting to sound crazy. "Like glitches." I decided to check the 47th floor myself. The elevator ride felt longer than usual, the fluorescent light flickering slightly as the car ascended. When I stepped out onto the floor, the air was noticeably colder than the rest of the building. The law firm took up the entire floor, with glass-walled offices lining the perimeter and clusters of cubicles in the center. The reception area was dark except for the dim emergency lighting and the glow from exit signs. "Security," I called out, my voice sounding small in the emptiness. "Anyone here?" No response, but I hadn't expected one. I walked down the hallway where I'd seen the shadow disappear. All the office doors were closed and locked. Nothing seemed out of place. I was about to head back to the elevator when I heard it, a soft tapping sound like fingers drumming on a desk. It was coming from one of the corner offices. The nameplate on the door read, Jonathan Mercer, Senior Partner. The door was locked, but I had the master key. I hesitated before using it, listening. The tapping continued, rhythmic and deliberate. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps, pause. I unlocked the door and pushed it open slowly. Mr. Mercer, security here. The office was dark and empty. The tapping stopped the moment I opened the door. I flipped on the light switch and looked around. It was a typical executive office, large desk, leather chair, bookshelves lined with legal volumes, framed diplomas on the walls. The desk was neat and organized with a closed laptop, a legal pad, and a pen holder. Nothing that could have made the tapping sound I heard. I checked behind the desk, under it, in the small private bathroom attached to the office. Nothing. As I turned to leave, I noticed the computer screen on the desk had turned on. It showed a simple text document with a single line of text. We see you watching US. We watch you too. My heart nearly stopped. I approached the desk slowly, staring at the screen. As I watched, another line of text appeared, as if someone were typing. You shouldn't be here alone 18 night, Frank. I backed away from the desk, my hand fumbling for my radio. How did it know my name? Before I could press the talk button, the screen went black. The office was plunged back into darkness. I practically ran back to the elevator, my heart pounding in my chest. Back in the security office, I immediately checked the footage from camera 148, which covered Mercer's office. The video showed me entering an empty office, standing still for about 30 seconds, then suddenly backing away and leaving in a hurry. The computer screen remained off the entire time. That was when I knew something was very wrong at Meridian Tower. Over the next week, the incidents escalated. I'd see figures at the edges of camera frames, always just out of focus or partially obscured. I'd hear voices having conversations when I knew the floors were empty. Elevators would move between floors with no one inside them. And the cameras, God, the cameras, they started showing things that couldn't possibly be happening. On camera 87, covering the 31st floor break room, I watched as all the cabinet doors opened simultaneously, then slammed shut in perfect unison. On camera 56, in a 22nd floor hallway, I saw a woman in outdated clothing, like something from the 1970s, walking slowly with her back to the camera. When she turned around, her face was just a blur of static. I started documenting everything, keeping a log of times, locations, and descriptions. I reviewed hours of footage, looking for patterns or explanations. The rational part of my brain kept searching for logical answers: faulty wiring, camera malfunctions, even pranksters somehow gaining access to the building. But I knew better. Whatever was happening at Meridian Tower wasn't natural. I tried talking to Miguel about it once, showing him some of the stranger footage I'd saved. You see that? I asked, pointing to camera 112, where a chair in an empty office had moved by itself. Tell me you see that, Miguel squinted at the screen. See what? The chair? It moved on its own. He looked at me with concern. Frank, that chair didn't move. Are you feeling okay? You've been working a lot of overtime lately. I played the footage again, and to my horror, he was right. The chair remained stationary, but I had seen it move. I had saved this specific clip because I had seen it move. That's when I realized whatever was happening wasn't just affecting the building, it was affecting the recordings too, or maybe just what I was seeing. The thought that I might be losing my mind crossed my mind more than once. But then came the night that confirmed I wasn't crazy. It was a Thursday, near the end of my shift. Around 5:30 a.m., I was making my final rounds before the day crew arrived. I was on the 68th floor, the executive level, home to the CEO's office and boardroom, when all the lights went out. This wasn't unusual in itself. Power fluctuations happened occasionally. The emergency generators should have kicked in within seconds, but they didn't. I stood in complete darkness, waiting. After about 30 seconds, my radio crackled to life. Frank, it was Miguel. You okay up there? We lost power in the basement too. I'm fine, I replied. Generator's not working. Negative. I'm checking the breakers now. I used the flashlight on my phone to navigate toward the stairwell. As I moved through the executive suite, I noticed something odd. It wasn't completely dark anymore. There was a faint blue glow coming from the boardroom at the end of the hall. Against my better judgment, I moved toward it. The boardroom door was closed, but I could see the blue light seeping out from underneath it. I put my ear against the door and heard voices, multiple people having a conversation, though I couldn't make out the words. I should have walked away. Should have gone back to the security office and waited for the power to return. But 27 years of being a security guard had conditioned me to investigate anything unusual. I opened the door. The boardroom was filled with people seated around the massive conference table, at least 15 of them, all in business attire. They were illuminated by a strange blue light that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. They were talking, gesturing, passing documents, behaving as if in a normal meeting, except they weren't normal. Their movements were too fluid, too perfect, and their faces, God, their faces, they had none. Where features should have been, there were only smooth, blank surfaces like mannequins. I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move or speak. None of them acknowledged my presence. They continued their silent-to-me meeting as if I weren't there. Then slowly, one by one, they began to turn toward me. 15 featureless faces, all oriented in my direction. The room temperature plummeted. I could see my breath. One of them, the figure at the head of the table, rose and began walking toward me. Its movements were wrong somehow, like watching someone move underwater. As it approached, features began to form on its blank face, eyes, nose, mouth swirling into existence like ink dropped in water. The face it formed was mine. My radio burst to life with static, making me jump. The boardroom was suddenly empty and dark. The power came back on, fluorescent lights flickering to life overhead. Frank. You there? Miguel's voice came through. Power's back. Generator had a hiccup. I couldn't respond. I was staring at an empty boardroom, trying to process what I'd just seen. Frank, you okay? I finally found my voice. Yeah, I'm fine. Be down in a few. When I reviewed the security footage later, the cameras showed me opening the door to an empty boardroom, standing there for almost 3 minutes, then closing the door and leaving. But I know what I saw. After that night, I started researching the history of Meridian Tower. It was built in 1986 on the site of an older building that had been demolished, the Meridian Hotel, a once grand establishment that had fallen into disrepair by the 1970s. I found newspaper archives about the hotel. In 1978, there had been a tragic fire that killed 17 people, most of them attendees of a corporate retreat. The fire had started in the top-floor ballroom during a late-night meeting. 17 people. I had seen 15 in the boardroom. The article included a photo of the retreat participants taken the day before the fire. I couldn't make out their faces clearly in the grainy newspaper image, but there was something familiar about their poses, the way they sat around the table. I dug deeper. The company holding the retreat had been Axiom Data Systems, the predecessor to Axiom Analytics, which now occupied the 53rd floor. The retreat was led by the company's founder, a man named Frank Mercer. Frank Mercer. My first name, the same last name as Jonathan Mercer, the law partner whose office I'd entered on the 47th floor. Too many coincidences. I went to the public library and found more information about the fire. According to witness statements, the blaze had started mysteriously, with no apparent cause. Some survivors reported strange behavior from the building's electrical systems before the fire, lights flickering, elevators moving on their own, telephones ringing with no one on the line. Sound familiar? The most disturbing account came from a hotel security guard who had been on duty that night. He claimed to have seen the meeting participants on his rounds earlier in the evening, but said they were not right, that they moved strangely, and seemed to know he was watching them even when he was observing from a distance. The guard, whose name was redacted in the public records, was later committed to a psychiatric facility after insisting that the fire victims were still in the building, watching him. That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, the phenomena have only increased. I see them everywhere now, the watchers. They occupy the building after hours, holding their meetings, walking the halls, using offices that should be empty. Sometimes they look human. Sometimes they don't bother with the pretense. They know I can see them. They make sure I know they can see me too. Last night, I found a newspaper on my desk in the security office. It wasn't there when I left to do my rounds, and no one else had entered the building. It was dated tomorrow, and the headline read, "Night Guard Found Dead in High-Rise Office Building." The article described how Frank Williams, 58, was discovered by the morning shift in the security office of Meridian Tower, apparently having suffered a massive heart attack during his shift. The medical examiner noted unusual freezing of the body's extremities despite the building's climate control system. The article quoted my supervisor saying I was a reliable employee who had recently been acting strangely and making claims about unusual activities in the building after hours. I'm writing this now, at 5:17 a.m., because I need someone to know the truth. Meridian Tower is not just a building. It's a vessel, a container for something that has been here since long before the tower or even the hotel that preceded it. They're watching me as I type this. I can feel them gathered behind me, their featureless faces hovering just at the edge of my vision. The cameras show an empty room, but I know better now. The night guard in 1978 was right. They never left. They've been here all along, watching, waiting, for what I don't know. Maybe they're trapped here, reenacting their final moments. Maybe there's something that was here before them, something that took their forms after they died. Or maybe there's something else entirely, something beyond my comprehension. The temperature is dropping rapidly in the security office. My breath is fogging in front of the screen. The monitors are showing impossible things, every camera feed filled with those blank faces, all turned toward me, all watching. I hear the elevator moving, coming down to the basement level. According to the system, it's empty. The door is opening now. I can hear footsteps approaching the security office. Multiple sets moving in perfect unison. They're coming for me. If anyone finds this, stay away from Meridian Tower at night. Don't look at the cameras. Don't acknowledge the watchers, because once they know you can see them, they'll never stop watching you. The door is opening. I see myself standing in the doorway, but it's not me. It's wearing my face, but what's behind that face is, the account ends here.